been 2 years, almost 3 since making a video, and almost 4 since making a game. What happened? Hello. Well, I'm here to talk about some of that today and more. I've been thinking about making a video like this for a while, and tonight I finally got around to doing it. I'm recording this on my old flip camera, which some of you may remember I used to walk around with the thing at random sites in Japan and just videotape and commenting over that. And the thing still works actually. Uh, I used to have some problems with the battery, and eventually the battery wouldn't hold a charge, so I couldn't use the thing for quite a while. But I found out recently that you can just use AA batteries to power the thing, so I got some of those, and there you go. It turns out it doesn't need a special battery after all. This is my first time doing a video like this, and I'm going to hopefully do this in one take. I did prepare some notes for the video, so if you kind of see me looking around like this, I'm consulting my notes, so, bear with me here. So yeah, let's get started. I realized that during the, almost 10 years that I've had this channel, that I've never actually done a video introducing myself, or even really appearing on camera and talking to the camera, so I thought I would actually try that for a change tonight. So yeah, let's do a little introduction. So, hello. My name is Jordan, though I'm sure most of you know me by my nickname Sivak, that I've been using for quite a while now. I'm originally from Sylvania, Ohio in the US, and I've been living in Japan since 2012. I currently work as a web developer for a company over here, and sometimes I do some miscellaneous translation work for the company, but the main job is web development. I have, for the most part, been enjoying my time over here and wanted to share some of the experiences, both good and bad. And perhaps some of this will shed some light as to, why I've been out of the scene for so long. I really haven't wanted to, but, it's just how it was. So I guess the first place to start is, how did I actually get over here in the first place? This also kind of ties in with the game development. So back in 2007, I decided to go back to the university to take some additional coursework to improve myself, and it was my hope that by doing so that I would be able to get a better job, and it would just help me in the long run. And I always wanted to do something with computers, but also with languages as well. It was also around that time that the whole homebrew NES scene got started. I found out about a version of Sudoku being released on a real cartridge and thought, it would be cool to try that. So, it also just happened that my extended coursework that I was taking at the university involved a course in assembly programming, which is what NES development's all about. The teacher was great. It was a good class, and I did learn a lot. And through the course, as well as online tutorials and doing things, by myself, experimenting with things, I was able to get Battle Kid 1 out in 2010. A couple of other games earlier, of course. Some of the other coursework involved some engineering courses. They were okay. I took calculus, not web development, operating systems, a few other classes, but I mainly liked the assembly course and the programming courses. Later on, I also decided to take up Japanese, and I started classes in that in 2009. And in summer of 2010, I was able to come over here on a school trip for 3 weeks. And the experience is what really made me want to come back here. My favorite experience out of the whole trip was actually spending a week in a town called Shinshiro, which is in Aichi Prefecture. And the reason why we were in Aichi Prefecture is actually my university, the University of Toledo, as well as the city of Toledo, have a sister city relationship with Toyohashi, which is also in Aichi Prefecture, and that's why we stayed in the area. So I tried a few things to come back over, such as the JET program, which, take it from me, that's pretty much a lost cause if you try it. It's just so selective, so competitive, that it's almost going to be impossible for you to get into that. And even if you do, you don't get much say as to where you get to go, and if you have a special place you want to go to, it's probably not going to happen. But in addition to that, I tried a few, companies. I did get an interview with one in Chicago. It's called Eon, which is an English teaching company, but I didn't get the job. I just had really no idea what they were expecting from that time. But whatever. I did try a few other things after that, but yeah, nothing really worked out. So I decided to come over here as a student. I figure if you're already in the country, getting a job is much easier than if you're overseas, especially if you're overseas without any real experience in Japan. So I did that. I applied to a Japanese school for foreigners, which is located in Okazaki, also in Aichi Prefecture. And interestingly enough, we actually came over to Okazaki for a day during the school trip back in 2010. So I kind of knew a little bit about the area, not much. We visited Okazaki Castle, which is an okay place. The park around it's actually a very nice park. So I applied in towards the end of 2011, and I got accepted in February 2012. I had to go up to Detroit to the Japanese consulates 2 times to get the paperwork in order. And if you're a student, you can only enter Japan in April or October. In my case, I entered in April. So yeah, I came over here April 2012. I remember getting here kind of late at night, so I was pretty tired. And at first, it was kind of a nerve-wracking experience, I have to say. It's a new home in a totally different country, but of course, I got used to it. I think I got used to it pretty quickly, actually. And as far as the studies go, they weren't too tough at first. A lot of it I actually already knew from the university, but I guess my Japanese was just too rough to get into a higher class at the time. But, it was okay. You know, I got to meet some people. Some of the teachers were pretty good. So, I enjoyed it at first. And kind of going back a little bit, Battle Kid 2 was actually not fully finished when I came over here. It was pretty close, maybe 95% or so. I had to do a few of the final cutscenes and whatnot, but yeah, I got it done around summer 2012, and it of course came out in December later that year. So yeah, it was around maybe 9, 10 months or so that I was here, just going to school. And around that time, though, I figured since I'm going to be here, I definitely wanted to be here much longer. That I knew that I definitely needed a job. The whole student experience was, maybe I'll stay and live for a while and go back, or maybe I'll just stay here longer. And it turns out I stayed here much longer than I think I was originally expecting. So yeah, I needed the job, and maybe around January, February 2013, I went to an employment agency, and they have a lot of those throughout the country. It's called Hello Work. You can find job ads, and they actually have an office here in Nagoya, which actually is specifically for foreigners, although they do have the ads for the other Japanese companies, so it's not just only for foreigners, but this specific branch had foreigners, like the translators and whatnot. So yeah, I found a job, and it was in a city called Chiryu, also in Aichi Prefecture. It's about maybe 20 minutes from Okazaki, and I was willing to give it a shot. I mean, I didn't have teaching experience, but it's what the job that most foreigners do, and I'm pretty sure most foreigners don't really have any sort of experience going into these jobs at first. I mean, maybe some companies might prefer someone who has like an education background, but for the most part, the only real requirements is a university degree and being a native speaker of English, which I had both. I have a degree in business administration, actually. So, yeah, I applied for the job, and it actually turned out that the company had branches not only in Shiryu, but also in Okazaki, the city I was living in. I didn't actually know that on the job ad, it only said Shiryu. But anyway, I went there for the interview, and the job ad actually, it wasn't really too specific about the company as a whole, but it turns out the company is a franchise of Nova, which is a English teaching company. They have branches all throughout the country. It's pretty big. I was a little concerned though because I had heard that company Nova had bankruptcy issues, maybe, I don't know, 2008, I don't know exactly. So, yeah, no, that was concerning. But it did turn out that this company is only franchising from Nova. Like they're using just the name and the teaching materials, but it's its own company. It actually ran a few other, they call them jukus, which are like after school schools for Japanese students. But I, of course, was with Nova, the English teaching part. So yeah, I went in for the interview. That was also pretty nerve-wracking because I get nervous when doing a lot of things for the first time. But yeah, the guy who interviewed me was a really nice guy, really understanding, and I got the job. And yeah, the other staff there were really nice, really helpful, especially since I'm inexperienced. Doing a lot of the classes, I actually, for maybe the first week or so, we actually had two teachers where I would kind of sit next to the teacher and sort of follow his lead, take some notes, and see, what they were doing. And yeah, that was definitely helpful. And then I, of course, did classes on my own. Maybe after about 6 months, I finally really got the hang of it, developed my own teaching style, and a lot of the students I got along with pretty well. So yeah, that was good for the first part of it. So anyway, the situation kind of developed where I was going to school on weekdays, and for the job, I was working 8 hours on weekends with a shorter 5 hour shift on Thursday nights. This job was also part-time, which is important because if you're a student in Japan, if you have a student visa that is, you can work up to 28 hours in a week. Any more than that is considered too much. Like the whole idea of the student visa is, you're going to school, so you should be, really focused on school, and just the part-time job should be helping out. But yeah, I mean, the job ad was for part-time anyway, so, that's fine. Sorry, I need a drink here. But anyway, this is kind of where the story gets to take sort of a negative turn. Like I said, the staff were all nice, but the actual company's manager is a bit of a different story. I mean, at first, there wasn't much interaction, but kind of later on, I interacted with her more. She's an really old Japanese woman with next to no English school, and also very short-tempered. Like, I mean, she would get upset over the most minor of things, most of which I don't even understand why, and some of which, I mean, it was in kind of like a tone where, oh, why did you do this? And like, well, I don't know. I mean, I didn't predict that you would react my way to doing something like this. I don't know. A lot of things that, shouldn't have been an issue in the first place. But anyway, maybe around July or so, I asked, can I go up to full time? Can you help me with a work visa? I would like to stay here for a while. And, I didn't really get a simple no, but just more of like this long explanation on, I don't know. Basically, I don't think she really liked me much as a person. I don't know why. I mean, I tried to get along. I tried to, mind my manners, but I don't know. This kind of goes back to that unforeseeable stuff that I was talking about before. A simple refusal would have been nice, or oh, we don't need more full-time staff. I would have accepted that, but whatever. But at least I got along with most of the students pretty well. So, kind of later on in the year, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I really don't want to be going to school for much longer because it was just so tiring. Going to school in the morning, going to the company on the weekends. I didn't have much free time to myself. And so I was actually looking for a few other possible jobs. I even went in for an interview for one, but it didn't work out. But in retrospect, it's probably better since that job would have been a much further commute, and it would have been, I think, much more taxing in the long run. So anyway, but later on, 3 of the staff actually left. 2 of them went back to their home countries, and a third actually took a different job in a different prefecture. So basically, the manager didn't have much choice. I mean, do I try to find other teachers or do I keep who I have? You know, and the students, I know that they talked to her. They said, oh, I like him. So yeah, she finally got the paperwork in order, and I was able to apply and get the work visa, which I got at the start of 2014. And the paperwork was actually quite extensive. And I even remember a reaction like, "Oh, doing all this paperwork's it's gonna be so tough on me," and blah 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 blah. It's like, well, it's that's what it is. Do you want to have staff here legally or don't you? So anyway, yeah, I got the paperwork in order and got the visa, like I said. And now I sort of faced another little dilemma since I'm going to have a work visa and go to work full time. I'm no longer a student. And with the school in Okazaki, I was staying in a student residence, but if you're not a student, you of course cannot continue to stay there. So I needed to move, and thankfully the school granted me 1 extra month of staying there. I didn't have to pay any extra rent, thankfully. And yeah, basically I had about 28 days to find another place to live and move there. So thinking about the whole residence thing, I knew that there's no way I wanted to have the manager actually get the housing in order for me, because if I did, then the manager would become my guarantor, which, if you don't know, to get residence like apartments in Japan, you need to almost always have some sort of guarantor, which is basically a person who promises to pay for any expenses should the tenants like suddenly disappear and maybe wreck up the place and whatnot. And it can be anybody, but a lot of people, even friends, don't want to do that because it just feels like such a big risk for them. Um, I mean, I don't wreck up the place, but whatever. So I found a guy who's in Nagoya, and I knew that I wanted to move to Nagoya because I wanted to be in more of the city area, not sort of a rural area, and not out in the middle of nowhere like Chiryu is. And so his business is actually helping foreigners find housing in the Nagoya area. So yeah, he's a really nice guy, spoke really good English. We looked at a few not houses, apartments, and yeah, I found one that I really liked, and that's where I currently am as of this video. And he helped me with that, and I moved out here within the time limit. And yeah, it was good. I really like this place a lot. But yeah, the whole month of January was pretty stressful given the situation, and that I was working full time, and that I had such a small time limit to get out here. But it worked out. After getting out here, I felt relieved, since I was coming here as since I came here as a student, I didn't have any furniture with me. So for the first few months, I was kind of sleeping on the floor. I didn't really have a dinner table or a desk. But I did get the furniture pretty quickly afterwards. Got my internet and all that stuff. So yeah, it worked out, and I think I finally got settled maybe after 4 or 5 months. So yeah, the first part was kind of tough, but yeah, it's fine now. I made sure to save a lot of money and go from there. So anyway, after getting established with the new job and throughout 2014, we actually did get some more staff because, like I said, 3 staff left, so we were pretty limited at that time. So we got some more people and had a total of 5. In the later part of the year, one staff actually got fired. I guess he didn't want to show up to work and didn't notify, and yeah, that was the end of him. And another guy, the one who actually hired me, by the way, he left. He took a different job, so we're down to 3 staff again. So it was a little stressful having the smaller amount of staff, but it was okay. And then around October of that year, I mentioned that we had the school in Okazaki, and that school actually was taken away by Nova due to mismanagement, basically. A lot of times there would not be any Japanese staff in the school, so it was up to us, the staff, to actually take care of things. It wasn't really hard to do, but I mean, they really should have had somebody there, but they didn't. And I know that they had an inspector come there maybe 2 or 3 times. They always saw no Japanese staff are here, and they're taking notes. And finally, yeah, the Nova company had enough, so they took the school away. And yeah, and like I said, mismanagement. So the manager was actually fired by Nova. They did get the company itself did get to keep the franchise, and what wound up happening was that the manager's son became the manager. I mean, I'm sure the mother was still running things behind the scenes, but he was basically the face of the school. So now we only have the Chiryu school, um, and it was really a big loss because when you have the two businesses and then one gets taken away, that also means your profits also start to diminish. So at that time, the school got renovated, and for the last part of the year, things were kind of bad in that we didn't get our full pay, and sometimes the pay was late. And finally, we the staff weren't going to stand for that, so we finally got kind of confronted them, so to speak. And then we did of course get everything, and then we didn't have that problem since then. The main reason that was given to us was the company is in the red. We have the hit on our profits due to losing the Okazaki school, which was the mother's fault, like I said. But whatever. And then towards the end of the year, we got into the situation where we had a meeting, and during this meeting, they basically said that we can't afford to have 3 full-time staff, so someone has to go part-time, and that someone actually turned out to be me. So for January, I was working part-time, which was okay. I mean, I got my visa renewal, so that was fine. But later on, they then decided to switch it to another staff and basically gave him the choice. You can either be part-time or you can leave. And he, of course, chose to leave. So now we're down to 2 teachers, and having 2 teachers is not good. It was really tough. And the situation also looked like it was not going to change anytime soon. So sometimes I would have to work 6 days a week. The only day off was Tuesday, and there's not really much to do on Tuesday. So anyway, at this point, I was really thinking about things. I have to work all this time. I've been working every weekend for 2 years. And the weekday shifts were from 1:30 to 9:30. And with the train rides, the commute from Nagoya to Chiryu, that of course takes time. And I wouldn't usually get home on weekdays until 10:30 at night. And on weekends, it of course started earlier, and finished earlier. But even then, it would usually finish around 6:30 maybe, and I wouldn't get home until maybe 7 o'clock at night. And since I had to get up early to go out there, I was usually beat. I didn't have a lot of energy to do a lot of things. So I kind of decided at that point, I think I've had enough of this. The pay was good. I will give them that. It was good. And the company even had a situation where, since we're working all this time, they even did pay overtime. So, good on them for that. But the other thing I was concerned about was the company was in the red. And I was really worried about that situation. Like, will this improve? Will this not improve? So I figured, getting out is probably in my best interest. So I was thinking, I've really developed in Japanese, and I know how to do computer work. So maybe I'll try doing something, combining both of those. And in May, I went back to that Hello Work office, which I mentioned earlier, and I applied for my current job, which I said is doing websites. I was at the time I was pretty rusty. Like I did understand how to do a lot of things, but I was really out of practice. I wasn't really updating my site, and even if I did, I wouldn't really be changing anything significant at the time. So for the application process, I got some phone calls, and I did have to actually take a web design test. Like I had to prove that I can actually make things. So the test involved getting an email with an image of a page, and then my job was then to take the image and then make it into an actual HTML document that works. And of course, they did provide the resources like the actual images, like the banners and the buttons and what have you. And I did get the pages to look like the image, but the main thing that they kind of complained about was like the coding style. For those of you who know HTML, I did a lot of things with the div tags, maybe too much with the div tags instead of using more appropriate tags, but whatever. And they didn't really want to take me. But what wound up happening was the company's president, the shacho, as they call it in Japanese, he actually called me one morning and we set up an interview. He came out to Nagoya and we talked. He does speak pretty reasonable English. I was actually surprised about that. I didn't actually realize he was the shacho during the interview. I thought he was part of the programming team. But later on, I found out, of course, he was. And so he said he was interested in me. He was interested in having a foreigner on staff. And so after the interview, he overruled everybody. Like they didn't want to take me, he did. So his word was final. So yeah, I got the job. And what was I going to say? And then, yeah, I had to, of course, tell the company where I was working at that I was going to be leaving. And I did that towards the end of May, which was more than a month's notice. I said that I would be leaving on July 1st. And take note of that. That'll be important for later. A month's notice, more than a month's notice. And my last day actually wound up being on July 4th. They actually asked me to stay on a few more days if possible, so I was able to do that. And so July 4th was the last day, and then I went to Yokohama, which is where my current company's head office is, on July 6th. And then training lasted for 2 weeks. So after the training, I of course came back and started working in the Nagoya branch. And now we're into August. And I, of course, wanted to go back and get my final pay. Prior to leaving, I even said to the manager that, after taking the job and after things kind of get settled, I would actually be interested in working something out where I could maybe work part-time, help out. And, he seemed, oh, okay, yeah, that might be nice. But then, anyway, I went to get the final pay, and, I'm looking at the pay slip, and, wait, this isn't good, because I'm only getting 60% of my pay. What happened to the 40%? The contract stated that a person has to work at least 21 days in a pay period to get the full pay. And like I said, I stayed to July 4th, but that in total became 20 days. So I figured if there was going to be a pay cut, maybe only 5%, 20 out of 21 is, so the 1 out of 21 is maybe 5%, maybe a little less than that actually. No, it is less than that. So, and, the contract also stated, give at least a month's notice, and I gave more than a month's notice, so, what's going on here? And, I didn't get any sort of valid reason from anybody, so, I was cheated. So, we actually did have a dinner together, so at least I got something. But yeah, I went back home and I'm naturally very upset about the situation and I don't know what to do. So I was asking some of the previous staff who worked for the company, did you get cheated? And no. Did you get cheated? No, I got everything. So, yeah, they basically were trying to pull something on me. So, what to do? So, a few days afterwards, I found out about a government agency called the Department of Labor Standards, and they basically help people, who have these sort of problems with companies. And I showed them some of the documentation, see if they can help me. They went over it, and it turns out they agreed with me about certain points, and then the whole process started. So the process involves, what was it? I need a drink. One moment. Sorry, it's a long video, so I need to drink and keep my. Anyway, so the process started, and the first part involves sending a bill to the company, basically saying, please pay this much to this bank account by this date, and I have to see if any response is generated. You have to send it by registered mail, but anyway. As I expected, no response came whatsoever. So the next step was to go back to the agency and then tell them the situation, and then they conducted an investigation to go over things. So finally, at the end of September, they ruled that the company must pay me more, but it only amounted to 20%. So in total, I got 80% of my final pay. So very disappointing, to say the least. And needless to say that my offer to work part-time was long rescinded pretty much after seeing the pay slip and having pretty much no promise of getting anything in addition to that. So yeah, that was the end of that place. A bunch of crooks. And I did tell a few of the students about the situation. Like I've kept in touch with some of them. I mean, I don't really see much of them anymore, but occasionally I might get a message or whatnot. One of the students I told actually even quit the place, so I was kind of happy about that. I was kind of thinking in retrospect, maybe if I had hired a lawyer, that I could have gotten more out of the situation, but probably in the long run, that would have likely been more expensive to do anyway, so whatever. They basically got their victory of unjustly cheating me, so anyway, that's the end of that situation. So, going on, I've been doing this new job since then. Weekends are always days off, which is great. Weekdays, I'm there until 8 o'clock, except for Fridays, which is until 10:30. But that's not bad. The main benefit to having the later shift is that if there's something I need to do on a weekday, like if the place is closed on weekends, then I can get that done in the mornings, especially on Friday. I feel like, yeah, I've really come a long way as a web developer with this job. I even redid my website earlier this year using some of the techniques I learned. It's responsive now, so you can actually view it on mobile devices. Although I did kind of do it earlier in the year, but since then I've come even further and further, so who knows, maybe I'll improve it even further from a coding standpoint, but we'll see. I think it's fine as it is. By the way, if you haven't seen it, yeah, check it out. I think it looks a lot better than it used to. Uh, so anyway, what else do I want to talk about? Yeah, my Japanese was also good enough to get the job, and that's also been improving since then. Speaking of Japanese, after I quit the school and kind of prior to getting the job, sort of in the middle, I was doing a lot of self-study, some of it with books. A lot of it, though, was actually with games. I played a lot of RPGs in Japanese, like the Final Fantasies, Suikodens. It really helped with reading a lot and a lot of vocabulary. And I always think, that's the best way to learn something. Like, if it's something you're genuinely interested in, especially if an English version also exists, that you can reference that and then learn that way. I mean, there's, of course, a lot of strange vocabulary that you'll learn from this, but, common sense, you're probably not going to go up to someone and say, I'm going to kill you. So, so what else about Japanese? There is the Japanese language proficiency test called Nihongo Noryoku Shiken. Some of you may wonder if I've ever taken that, and yes, I have. I actually did take the test the day before I went to my training. So it's like I leave the company, take the test, go to training. And it was the level 2, which is the second most difficult. And I didn't really expect much. I wound up getting like a 43% overall, which is way below the passing. But, it's got so much specialized vocabulary, and you only have a certain time limit to get it all done. But, yeah, whatever. I didn't need it for the job. There are some jobs where they do want you to have it, but I don't know. I think other jobs, if you can actually put together a decent resume, and if you can actually talk on the phone with a guy and actually have a conversation and get through it, they can probably look past the whole test thing. I think it's a lot like the TOEIC test that a lot of Japanese people take. It's like a very difficult English test that, I mean, if you read it and if you're a native, some of it might seem like, yeah, maybe you should know this, but other parts, like why it's just so limited as to when you would use it. But I don't know. I guess the whole point is, do you have like this overall sort of view of the language? But whatever. What else? So, oh yeah, another point I'd like to go back on is maybe some of you might have seen a video of a game that I actually was working on called Sydney Hunter. It was going to be a homebrew for the NES, but they also wanted to do it on other consoles. I think they had Intellivision and the Wii and some others in there. And I did do some work on it. I got the basic engine going. It was better than the Battle Kid 2 engine. And I did, of course, after Battle Kid 2, I learned a lot with programming. But yeah, just the hardships that I mentioned. This was probably around 2013 when I started, and yeah, I got something done, but then later on it just wasn't really, no progress was being made, and finally I just had to, get out of the project, and we didn't have any contract, so, no real harm was done. I mean, I did feel bad that I had to abandon the project. I hate abandoning anything, but, I underestimated how trying my situation wound up being. But yeah, that's what happened with that. It's unfortunate, but whatever. Nowadays, though, yeah, I've been exercising a lot. I go once a week to the gym. Also go swimming in the summertime. I was actually there today, so I had a pretty decent run. I do wish I could go twice a week, but yeah, it's tough with having to finish work at 8 o'clock because the gym closes at 9 o'clock, so I can't. Well, I mean, I probably could, but it would be a very short session. But anyway, what else? Yeah, I would like to do something more with game making, definitely. I will say, though, there is something I've been working on, but I won't get into the specifics at this point. If you're watching this video well after the release date, maybe the specifics have been revealed, but if not, please stay tuned. I will post something when I have it. Anything else? No? Yeah, I guess that's it. So, if you've been listening this whole time, thank you. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, maybe perhaps you have some questions or things you'd like to know about Japan, yeah, leave a comment. Yeah, and I'll see if I can cover any topics of interest. So yeah, that's it. So hopefully my next video will not take another 2 years to make. Yeah, that was a long time. So sorry about that. So yeah, I guess I'll wrap this up. Thank you very much. Take care.